Hello, welcome to Astronautics for Exploit. I am Dr. Anyashola Ogundele and I will be presenting orbital space tourism. The overview of my presentation is as follows. Importance of orbital space tourism, barriers of orbital space tourism, and stages of orbital space tourism. Space, which was initially an exclusive domain for government space agencies and professional astronauts, is gradually becoming an area where private aerospace companies and entrepreneurs can invest into and provide avenue by which space tourists and enthusiasts can have access to space, perform experiments, and travel to space as tourists. The space tourism concept, one of the most exciting emerging futures and niche segment of the aviation and tourism industry, is enabling human imaginations of becoming commercial astronauts and experience space travel for recreational, leisure, or business purposes to become a reality. Presently, space tourism is developing at a rapid pace. It has caught the eye of several billionaires and entrepreneurs, such as Elon Musk of SpaceX, Branson of Virgin Galactic, and Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin. In the nearest future, these entrepreneurs are planning to deliver continuous and uninterrupted space tourism services to the interested individuals. Although currently space tourism is extremely expensive, but as rocket reusable technology matures, the price will be cheaper than what is obtainable today. Space tourism, for example, orbital and suborbital, which is also known as recreational space travel, either on government-owned vehicles or on vehicles fitted by private companies, is gaining traction. Since the flight of the world's first space tourist, American businessman Dennis Tito, on April 28, 2001, space tourism has gained new prominence as small suborbital and orbital tourism opportunities have become available. The launching of Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Galactic, into space on suborbital trip on July 11, 2021, and Jeff Bezos, founder of Blue Origin, on July 20, 2021, on suborbital trip into space on board a New Shepard, created a giant leap toward commercial suborbital spaceflight and achieved the milestone that is paving the way for space tourism. Launching of SpaceX Inspiration 4 amateur and commercial astronauts, a privately chartered spaceflight by Jad Esikmas on September 15, 2021, which was the first crewed orbital mission with no professional astronauts on board, marked a significant step in the development of space tourism. It has been forecasted that orbital space tourism as a business model will make significant contributions towards improved operational efficiencies, reusability, reliability, and economics of scale to the world of crewed spaceflight. For SpaceX, Inspiration 4 is an important proof of concept that they hope will further demonstrate the safety and reliability of their autonomous rocket and capsule systems. Importance of orbital space tourism. Space tourism, the practice of traveling into space for recreational purposes, is gaining momentum among space enthusiasts day by day. Presently, trips to space is very expensive, but a number of companies are taking steps and developing technologies that will help in reducing the cost and make space traveling available to broader swath of the society at cheaper price. This picture shows SpaceX Dragon designed for launching private citizens into orbit. Space tourism as an important factor. For a long period of time, space tourism has been an important factor in the aerospace industry. To get people's interest in space tourism, Panama and Thomas Cook put out notice for people interested in learning tourism to register, and about 93,000 people registered for the trip. This picture shows the mannequin known as Teman seated in the rooster. Significance of orbital space tourism. A new leisure industry championed by entrepreneurs and private space companies is being offered by the orbital space tourism for interested individuals. The industry is enabling aspiring private astronauts to travel to space beyond the Earth's atmosphere. This picture shows space tourism entrepreneurs such as Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Galactic, and Jeff Bezos, founder of Blue Origin. Economic benefits of space tourism. Rapid and viable space exploration. Space tourism industry is leading to a significant lowering of the cost of access to space, enabling a more rapid and viable human space exploration process and possible eventual colonization of the moon, Mars, and beyond. It was predicted that space tourism could become a billion-dollar market. This picture shows Dennis Tito, first space tourist. Apart from the suborbital flight that is presently receiving high attention and interest from investors and funders such as Richard Branson of Virgin Galactic and Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin, research and development of orbital flight and orbital hotel for orbital space tourism are in top tier. This picture shows Spaceport Hotel. Various barriers of orbital space tourism are economic, technical difficulties, international regulation, and public safety. This picture shows astronaut performing spacewalk. Economic. Presently, commercial space travel is very expensive, and the general public cannot afford it. The orbital space tourism industry is promising, and it is believed that as spacecraft become more reusable and there is increase in investment, the orbital travel cost will be greatly reduced. This picture shows International Space Station. Technical difficulties. In order to make orbital space tourism venture economically viable, there is the need to develop reusable spacecraft, which requires a lot of high technological advancement and investment. This picture shows a render of Axiom Station, the first private space station being designed and built by Axiom Space. Public safety is another barrier of orbital space tourism. This is another concern of orbital space tourism. Public safety is of paramount importance, and therefore, space tourism liners must ensure that public safety is put into consideration. This picture shows Voyager Space Station, a proposed rotating wheel space station planned to start construction in 2026. International regulation is another barrier of orbital space tourism. Problems of international regulation pose further problems for the future of space tourism. This picture shows Aurora Station with rooms for 6 space tourists. Stages of orbital space tourism. We have the orbital space tourism preparation, orbital space tourism flight, and orbital space tourism return. Orbital space tourism preparation stage involves payment for the trip, medical and physical fitness, insurance, space tourist shoots, and space tourist training. Payment for the trip. Anyone that is interested in orbital space tourism will firstly identify the tourism provider and make payment for the trip. There are a number of space tourism providers, and some of them are SpaceX, Boeing, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, Action Space, and Space Perspective. This picture shows SpaceX, Boeing, Galactic, Blue Origin, Action Space, and Space Perspective. Payment for the trip. Inspiration 4 mission was the first SpaceX all-private mission to be launched to orbit. The mission was paid for by the billionaire Jad Isaacman at an estimated cost of about $200 million. The mission was aimed at raising funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis. This picture shows Inspiration 4 members Jad Isaacman, Ele Axenius, Dr. Sean Proctor, and Chris Sembrowski. Medical and physical fitness. Presently, the medical requirements for an aspiring orbital space tourist has not been fully determined and set up. A crew member that flew with Inspiration 4 was a cancer survivor and was said to have a disability when she was a child. This picture shows astronaut Thomas Pesquet exercising on the sarcoergometer with vibration isolation and stabilization system. The station's exercise bike inside the Destiny Laboratory model. Medical and physical fitness, medical screening. Applicants for space tourism are screened for irregular heartbeat and hypertension. This is to enable the doctors to determine if the tourist will be able to withstand physical stress during launching. Height requirements imposed for Inspiration 4 member selection process was to be less than 6 feet and 6 inches in height, and as stated by Elon Musk, should be able to endure a super intense roller coaster ride. This picture shows astronaut Dan Buchan runs on the treadmill. Insurance. Traditional space insurance market. The traditional space insurance market insures the value of satellites launched into orbit around the Earth. Usually, government and military satellites are self-insured, but the financial backers of commercially owned satellites often require insurance to be in place. Space insurance market. The market for space insurance, specifically space-related mishaps for mechanical parts, recently amounted to $800 million annually. This picture shows International Space Station for performing on-orbit experiment. It has been projected that space travel spending could reach between $10 billion and $15 billion annually by 2030 and $1 trillion annually by 2040. Currently, there is no available insurance coverage specifically designed for space tourism participants. There is insurance against space-related mishaps for rockets and the like, but not for passengers. This picture shows an astronaut performing spacewalk. Space tourist shoot. Each of the space tourism companies designed a proprietary and contemporarily styled spacesuit kit for our passengers. Orbital tourist shoot. At least 2 different types of garments will be needed for the trip for each of the orbital tourists. Correct and appropriate suit fittings are necessary for the space tourists for comfortability and safety of the tourists in space. This picture shows astronauts wearing special SpaceX suits. The pictures here show different customized and proprietary spacesuits. So we have the Inspiration 4 SpaceX proprietary spacesuit, Boeing Starliner proprietary spacesuit, Virgin Galactic proprietary spacesuit, and Blue Origin proprietary spacesuit. Space tourist training. Different types of training are offered to the aspiring space tourists. This will help in making the tourists on board the spacecraft and other crew members to be safe and to be able to take appropriate actions in case there is emergency. Classroom instructions on splashdown and recovery, including how to deal on likely emergencies as the spacecraft springing a leak and beginning to sink, or toxic thruster exhaust filling the cockpit, are also being offered to the tourists. This picture shows Inspiration 4 crew returning from Camp Muir on Mount Rainier on May 3, 2021. Generally, NASA typically takes about 2 years or more to train a crew for a particular mission. Aside from the preceding years, astronauts have to spend in basic training before they qualify for a given mission in the first place. Inspiration 4 Orbital Space Tourist Training. In comparison, the Inspiration 4 crew members trained for about 6 months between April and September 2021. This picture shows Inspiration 4 crew members altitude chamber training. Zero-G training. Zero-G Corporation takes paying customers on zero-gravity flights or parabolic flights, during which an aircraft flies in alternating upward and downward arcs to create a microgravity environment in the cabin. Some passengers fly for the thrill of weightlessness, while scientists use the plane to conduct microgravity experiments, but everybody on board floats for brief periods of time during the flights. Pre-flight zero-G training. Pre-flight zero-G training involving the use of parabolic trajectory aircraft is offered to the space tourists so as to prepare them for zero-G environment in space. This picture shows zero-gravity flight of SpaceX civilian Inspiration 4 crew. Orbital Space Tourism Flight Stage involves launching, weightlessness, food, orbital tourism events, and medical services. Launching. During this phase, the spacecraft is learned to convey orbital space tourism into space. Inspiration 4 passengers flew aboard SpaceX Dragon capsule, and they spent 3 days orbiting the Earth several times at an altitude of up to 360 miles. The Dragon capsule was launched using SpaceX reusable Falcon 9 rocket, and after the launch, the first stage booster used for the mission also successfully landed on an ocean platform. This picture shows Chris Zembrowski, Jad Isaacman, Eli Axnios, and Zian Proctor Inspiration 4 crew members with the Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon capsule. So the video here shows the launching of SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying Inspiration 4 crew. Weightlessness. The sensation of weightlessness or zero gravity happens when the effects of gravity are not felt. Astronauts in space usually do not feel the effect of gravity. For example, the International Space Station is in perpetual free fall above the Earth. Its fall motion, however, just about equals the speed of its fall toward the planet. This implies that the astronauts inside are not pulled in any particular direction. As a result, they are said to be floating. In a similar fashion to the astronauts on International Space Station, orbital space tourists also experience weightlessness. This picture shows SpaceX Inspiration 4 crew members. Space foods. Space foods are usually in plastic containers. Some space foods can resume their consistency by adding cold or hot water, while others can be heated up in the oven. Foods such as fruits, bread and nuts can be eaten just as they are. When drinking liquids, a straw is used to suck the liquid out of a sealed package. This is done so that it will not spill or possibly cause any damage to the machines. Pre-flight training. During the pre-flight training, orbital space tourists are taught how to eat food in space and other food handling requirements. This picture shows astronauts eating pizza on board the International Space Station. Orbital tourism events. Various orbital space tourism events can be performed on board the spacecraft. Exercise is one of the activities being performed by astronauts so as to enable them to keep fit. Further activities that could be included in future are space toys, swimming pools, dancing, and so on. This picture shows Dennis Tito, first space tourist, while on board the International Space Station. Medical services. Among the tourists on board the spacecraft, there will be medical experts. They be the ones that will be responsible for the monitoring of the health of the tourist. The medical experts check for any potentially dangerous situations like heart problems, but also assist with the inconveniences of nausea and any cuts or abrasions, all of which can create a problem for the tourist and fellow passengers in orbit. Communication with the ground. The medical experts will be equipped with the required tools to communicate with the ground-based medical team in case there's any life-threatening developments. This picture shows Inspiration 4 crew while in orbit. Orbital space tourism return stage includes re-entry, landing, post-flight medical checkup, and astronaut wings. Re-entry. Re-entry refers to the return of a spacecraft into Earth's atmosphere. As a spacecraft re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, it is actually traveling very much faster than the speed of sound. The air density is very low because re-entry occurs many miles above the Earth's surface. During re-entry, strong shock waves are generated on the lower surface of the spacecraft. This picture shows deployment of the Crew Dragon's 4 parachutes before the splashdown. Re-entry of the Crew Dragon spacecraft. Typically, the Crew Dragon spacecraft enters Earth's atmosphere by traveling at a speed of about 17,000 miles per hour. The friction of particles in the atmosphere creates a drag force, slowing it down drastically while hitting the outside of the capsule to temperatures nearly as hot as the sun. A heat shield protects the astronauts from the extreme temperatures. This picture shows Crew Dragon spacecraft re-entry. Landing. Completion of re-entry phase. Once the orbital space tourism spacecraft, for example, Crew Dragon, has completed the ferry re-entry phase of its return flight, the spacecraft will deploy its parachutes, which will slow down the vehicle as it descends for a gentle splashdown in the ocean. Spacecraft hoisting. After landing, a search and recovery crew will be waiting nearby on a navigator ship. For example, SpaceX navigator ship, so as to help the crew out of the Crew Dragon and hoist the spacecraft out of the water so that it can be returned to the base. This picture shows splashdown of the first fully private mission in orbit, SpaceX Inspiration 4 crew to the Earth. The video here shows spacecraft ferry re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, parachute deployment during re-entry, and splashdown of Inspiration 4 spacecraft after re-entry. Post-flight medical checkup. After returning from space, astronauts can experience a number of health and physical issues as a result of living in space without gravity. According to NASA, for flights that go as long as 6 months, astronauts can experience difficulties with balance, muscle weakness, and cardiovascular deconditioning. This picture shows the first space tourist, Dennis Tito, after returning to the Earth. Post-flight medical checkup. Inspiration 4 orbital space tourists post-flight medical checkup. Inspiration 4 flight crew spent 3 days in orbit. The 4 astronauts, after returning to the Earth, received a health screening. Inspiration 4 astronauts undertook some experiments that gauged their sense of balance, standing without swing and moving between sitting and standing positions. They also performed a series of tests measuring their cognitive performance, the same ones they performed before liftoff, and each during orbit. This picture shows SpaceX CEO Elon Musk with the Inspiration 4 crew before launch on September 15, 2021. Astronaut's Wing. Award of Astronaut's Wings. A commercial astronaut is a person who has commanded, piloted, or served as an active crew member of a privately funded spacecraft. Astronaut wings are awarded to astronauts, commercial astronauts, and space tourists in recognition of traveling into orbit. This picture shows the 4 private astronauts of Inspiration 4 with their SpaceX astronaut wings. For more information, contact Astronautics for Exploit. You've been watching and listening to Orbital Space Tourism. Thank you.